first hear about
Yeah, 'cause
Stargate?
he heard first.
You heard
I heard
first.
first. I think I got the call from Ron French or Brad Wright. Ron French was the first producer, production manager.
Yeah.
And that's somebody I knew from here, a local guy. And he called and asked if I was available, and then I met Brad Wright and Jonathan, and they told me what the gig was, and as we were talking earlier, you work all the time. We all love working, which is how and why I suppose we've all been together so long and done such great things together. So anyway, I met with Brad and Jonathan, got the gig, and it was 44 episodes, which was unheard of, plus building all of these massive standing sets. Which we then had to move into a stage that was being built as we were shooting in the effects stage, having had all of the sets ready for day one, because we couldn't make any noise when you're shooting one scene. You can't build over there because the effects stage is 460 feet, 480 feet long by, I don't know, 50, 60 feet wide and 50 feet high. So it all had to be done. Then it had to be moved to the new stage, which was being built as we were shooting. And we were all over there measuring many times the elephant doors to make sure that ring would fit through the elephant doors in the new stage that was being built, because the gear itself was very expensive. And I think I mentioned to David, it was built in Seattle, or it was built in somewhere in America.
Oh, the first gate.
Yeah.
For the feature.
The gear, yeah.
Oh, the gear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was built across the border, I think, and then at great expense at shipping, as well as working every time it was used. So anyway, I got the gig. I had been working with Bridget.
We had just done Doctor Who.
Doctor Who,
Yeah.
right.
That was, I think, that was one of the first sort of things being done in Vancouver that used visual effects.
Yeah. Green
screen.
Everybody's,
Yeah.
It's like now people say AI and they go, oh, it's back then it was green screen. Oh, we're never going to work again, for God's sakes.
Well, and how do you do it?
And how do you do it? Well, we've done a little bit, Bridget and I and Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It was great.
We had our foot in the door.
Yeah, they thought we were like wizards, you know. And this guy
We had worked in Calgary, actually Toronto originally.
No.
Calgary.
Toronto, Montreal, then Calgary. Toronto, and I'll take Manhattan. Montreal and Cannonball with Rarity. And then to Calgary with Ken Adam, because I was living here in Vancouver at that point.
Right. And then I was still living in Toronto and had decided to move out here, way west of the mountains, scary place that no one was ever allowed to cross over. And
I guess who was there?
and so moved here going like, well, I'll see if I can get any work when I get out there. I knew Richard was here and came and phoned him up and said, hey, I'm out here now. I said, what's happening?
After about 3 months, he calls me.
Yeah.
Not that long, right? It didn't call and say, hey, I'm coming, I'm going to be there. No. How long have you been here? Like, oh, about a
We
year.
had to find a place to live, do all of this. And
Anyway.
you had just gotten Stargate.
Yes.
And they didn't even have production offices. So it was like, well, yeah, come and work with us for a few weeks, and you can work from your apartment, I'll work from home, and we'll start on the standing sets, because you kind of knew what they wanted to be, because they had to look a lot like the ones from the
movie.
From the feature. And so we started doing that, and then they got production offices, and I suddenly showed up, and there's a whole bunch of people I've never met. And it was a very weird experience, because I'd done a lot of film and stuff in Toronto, and I was in the production office, and I could practically tell you who everybody was. Like, oh, that must be the accountant. Oh, those are the props guys. Those got to be the grips. Didn't know anybody. They're just archetypes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I knew that was the art director because he told me. And yeah, just met a whole bunch of people. We started working on the show.
Yeah.
What I figured was a few weeks work. We were there for 5 years, and you continued on for another 400.
Yeah.
Well, you did Atlantis
You
after
did
that.
Atlantis.
Yeah, I
and
did. I
Universe.
stayed for another 5 years and did Atlantis. I didn't do.
Didn't do any of it?
I didn't do
Okay.
Universe. No, I left.
It started on its own.
That was when I had moved on. I figured after.
We do
that-
things in 5-year increments.
Yeah, after doing something for 10 years, it was sort of like, well, maybe I should try doing something else.
Yeah. And she took Atlantis in a great new direction. It was really interesting to see because
Yeah.
by the time I had left, I'd reached the point, as I was saying, David, you know, if I read a script, yet another script that said an alien object, I was going to strangle somebody. And anyway,
We need a few
I
more.
figured my term was over and it was time for Bridget, who had been there since the outset and who was a very talented and wonderful person and all the rest of those great things I can say, give her shot, you know, there you go. Because me, I gotta move on and do other things. And you came with me.
I left with you, and I think Ivana.
Yeah.
It was a whole new team.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we left
Yeah.
her. Wasn't Brenton there at the time he stayed with you?
He, no,
Because Ken Rabehl had. Ken came with. I can't remember.
Ken left to go and work
Yeah.
on
That's
the Andromeda.
Yes.
A
Yes.
word I can't say.
Ken wanted to give his shot at production design,
Yeah.
so he went and did Andromeda and he did something else.
Yeah.
And after he had done that, he realized that production design wasn't his forte.
as
No.
much fun as you.
And he and I hooked up again
Yeah.
on I
Battlestar?
forget what, but I think Battlestar.
Yeah.
And
We worked on a couple of other things with him.
You guys did Dead
We
Like
did
Me.
some,
Dead
Dead
Like
Like Me, or,
Reaper.
uh,
We did a lot of. After I left Stargate, we did a lot of pilots. We did Prophet, which is where we designed that. We designed and built that huge backdrop.
Yeah, Prophet was before.
it was
Is that
before
before?
Stargate, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's been a long time.
Yeah, we did about
The
four.
lithium is
five
wearing off.
pilots.
It wasn't really very long between
Stargate.
you leaving Stargate and you being on Battlestar. It was only about 18 months. You
No,
did.
Yeah.
no, it was longer than that, because we did about 4 pilots, 4 or 5.
Yeah, you did 4 or 5 pilots
Yeah.
in 18 months.
Did we? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it just felt
Yeah,
like
because
18 years.
you did, yeah.
God, pay
It was-
attention, we worked a lot.
Dead Like Me, Reaper, one that has, I can no
Because
longer remember because it was
I saw the pilot for Battlestar,
That was a
and I
miniseries,
a
think
miniseries, yeah.
we were, I think we were not. I don't think we started Atlantis yet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Ken did some of those with us, and then we went on to,
Yeah.
to Battlestar, and he came on that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And did I never work with you on
Yeah.
Stargate?
Yeah. For
Yeah.
the first 5 years.
No, after. With you as production designer on Stargate.
Yeah, makes me wonder what they were doing
Yeah,
when
you
I'd be
did.
out on the road, right?
Did you? No.
Because I only remember doing
No.
2 little things on Universe, so
No.
I never worked on
No.
Atlantis.
No.
Right.
No, you didn't work on Atlantis. And we didn't start Atlantis for, I did 2 years of Stargate, which was just doing Stargate, which in hindsight was just so lovely. Just doing
Right.
one show at a time was nice. And then we dug in, started doing the Atlantis
At the same
and
time.
doing the 2 of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So Joe pointed out, or somebody pointed out, over 40 episodes in a season. That was a little dense. It was intricate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was great. I saw some of the sets and designs that Bridget had done, and they were terrific. It's like,
We
that's
did a lot of stuff.
it makes you feel good. It's kind of when your kid does well.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it feels like that. Not that she's my child, but she has her own talents and skills and all the rest. But and then both of them, I've been very lucky. I mean, guys like Ken Rabehl, Bridget, Doug, come on. It's like, how can I lose, for Christ's sakes? I have to be an idiot to blow this deal, And we all, from pretty much day one, understood each other. I don't know if you know what it's like when you can talk to somebody and they get what you're saying, they get the undercurrent, they get the backstory, they get it all in a couple of words, right? You don't have to sit there and beat it to death and explain this and explain that and why and blah, blah, blah. Both of these people would come to me sometimes and say, I have a better idea. What? Heaven forbid. How could you? How dare you?
Never ever.
and,
We just
and they were right.
Here's your idea reinterpreted.
Yeah,
And,
and they were,
you know.
like I say, and they were right. It was difficult to swallow, but
I think it was just a good time to be doing that kind of television, because we got to build a lot of really big stuff.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we filled stages.
Yeah.
You know, Tom Wells would always become like, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes, and I'll need another stage
Yeah.
and more money.
and more money.
And we filled them.
And we
Like,
filled them. They
I
were
mean,
always, you know,
three at Norco, the effects stage, and then
the twos.
and then
Two
5
Stargate
and 6.
stages,
So
yeah.
how many is that?
We
I
were,
don't
up, we
know.
were up to 7 at one
And then
point.
sometimes we'd have the
Seven, and
baby
then we-
stage, or, you know.
And
Plus
then-
locations.
Yes, locations.
You know,
And we were filling those up,
Yeah.
and we would fill them up,
Wall
and
to
then
wall.
we tear it out, and we would fill it up again, and it was like that was really.
Yeah.
I've lost them now, but I had this like Excel spreadsheet for all the stages, locations for the 2 different shows, all divided up into different colors, so we could track when spaces were going to be
yeah.
being used, when they'd be available, and when we could start turning them over again. And I
And it
remember
was-
going into Brad and John, and I was like, I got the script, or like I've gone through the script, and in like I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes in the future, we are going to be in trouble. We're not going to have anywhere to build. And they looked at me like, and I had this, just looked like a crazy quilt. And they're like, okay, we'll change the order of the episodes then. Would that fix it? And I'm like, yes, it will. But that's the only way you can do that sort of stuff is to be
But
looking
that speaks
that
to
far in
the
advance.
ability that she would spot it, and that they would actually change it.
Yes, yeah.
They don't dig their heels in and say, what do you know? We're going to
No.
do it anyway. And, you know, beat the hell out of everybody, including all the crews. They would understand and say, we got a great group of people, we're going to keep them happy, we're going to get it done the way it should be done, and we will switch the order.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
And they were great, the producers were great too, because you would go down and be just talking in the office with them, going like, 2 episodes from now, 3 episodes from now.
Oh, yeah.
What's it gonna be?
I
You know,
would,
where do you wanna go?
yeah, I would, at the beginning of every season, I would start a week earlier. And I would go to the offices at Stargate, and Brad and the writers were all there. Brad, Jonathan, the writers were in that office, and they were working out the storyline for the whole season. And I would go to the offices at Stargate, and Brad and the writers were all there. Brad, Jonathan, the writers, or as much as they knew. I said, look, I don't need the details. I need the big bounces. I need to know, is this another planet? Is it a subsidiary of whatever? Just the big beats. Give me those. And it would take a week to go through all of this, and it would take a week for me that week, maybe spilling into the next, because these guys, the entire, the keys obviously would start first, because they would set up props and set deck, and Tommy was construction and paint and all the rest. And I, in that week, would say, okay, I could divide the work up and say, who's going to be working on what? So when these guys showed up, they didn't sit around drinking coffee for
No.
the first week.
Yeah.
It was, look, we're going to have a meeting, and here's what I'm thinking. We're going to try this and that and that and that. And if this works with these guys, we would move on from there, because everybody had a direction. Because when that bell rang, we were off and we were running.
Yeah, there was no down. Like there was no downtime.
No.
I mean, I think considering the scale of the show, we kept our pace pretty good. But that was only because you gave us direction, and then we were all able to follow it.
Yeah.
And there was, it was it was just everybody working together as a team, and everybody working in the same direction, and having really strong departments that you could really rely on to, do their part of the job and not have to micromanage them or be checking back and making sure that things were being addressed. I mean, did do all that, but you'd find out, yes, everything's fine, it's progressing, everything's in good shape.
The Davidsons were or set deck, and they were terrific together, the two brothers. And then Dan Sissons did the first season, and Dan was an amazing props guy, who I had worked with many times prior on various shows, and with Bridget as well. So we had a pretty tight crew. We weren't training too many people. We were all well integrated in knowing, this is the A team that's going into this show.
Yeah.
And again, I keep going back to Brad and Jonathan. At any time, I could walk into that office, and with Bridget or with Doug or by myself or whatever it took, and say, here's what we're seeing, and here's what's working, and here's what's not working. How do we accomplish what you want to get? It's not what I want to get. You guys sold it to MGM, so we're going to follow your lead. I'm not here to lead the dance, I'm here to follow you. And we would always come out knowing where we were going. We never came out of there saying, oh, Jesus, now what? So it was like that.
And it was good all the way down the ladder, because we'd produce stuff, it would go off to construction, and it would be, they just do it.
Yeah.
You go into the shop every once in a while and go like, oh yeah, that's good. Or they'd come and go, we're changing this, here's why. And you go, okay, that makes total sense.
Well, and Tom's team,
They were
they were just, I think Tom developed that system of the trusses, right?
Yes.
And hanging, so essentially all these massive sets were built off of a sort of a scaffold system of trusses. So the first thing that would go up would be the trusses, and that's what supported all the walls. And then all the walls, the flats would hang, which allowed all those flats to be wild. It meant that the trusses were reusable, so that reduced the cost. And it also made things just go up really quickly and come down. And they were absolutely brilliant. He had such a good group of guys, really good.
He came to me when we were doing the set in the new stage and building the Stargate set, where the Stargate's here in the walls. And Tommy comes to me and he says, Richard, can we build with cotton above 14 feet? I said, yeah, why not? If we're going to fly a wall, we're going to fly a wall where the camera is. I don't care what's 14 feet in the air. He saved us a hell of a lot of money and time and effort with that one comment. But he knew he could come to me and ask me if I got rocks in my head or whatever, and like Doug says, their offices and shop were not on the lot, and then we would transport everything in for the most part, except when we were building on the stage. And Tommy would always say, it'll take, even though it took him 20 minutes, I'll be there in 10 minutes and I'm going to need more time and I'm going to need more money and more space. And that was his line.
Yeah.
But he always delivered. Always.
Yeah. And I mean, the stuff that we were building, it wasn't coming off the shelf.
No.
I think they.
Well, you used Gary York was one of his key guys.
Gary
And you used him on
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Yeah,
yes.
on Sanctuary, and he was.
Great guy.
Yeah, he was a great guy. We did miracles on that show that were like, because there we really had no space, time, or money, and yet he still we still pulled it off.
I remember him. The first time I met Gary York, I was here working on Bird on a Wire, a movie with John Badham, and Philip Harrison was the designer, and I remember we were going to blow up a gas station in Chinatown.
Yes, you do.
And there's this guy on this, it was a one-story gas station. We were putting a fake second floor on it. And Gary York, he was a little fellow, long hair, which immediately ingratiated him to my black little heart. And he's up there, and I'm looking, and I'm saying, "Could we have that railing, you know, a little bit lower so we can see where the window is, and I could put somebody there?" And he goes, "Sir, you can have anything you want," with this big smile.
Yeah,
It was
that
like,
was Gary.
and that was Gary York.
Yeah.
You can have anything you want. That was great.
And he was great with geometry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Because we would constantly have discussions. When
Yeah.
I would
Oh,
I would
because
do my
you're,
projections
He's
of
the
geometry
mathematician in the group.
of something
yeah,
and go, here's the way these two arches are going to intersect.
yeah,
And it made no sense at all when you just thought of it in your brain. It's like, no, two arches coming in like this are going to intersect with the line that does that. And I'd go, "Gary, it's going to be a straight line that drops to the floor." And he go, "Can't be." And I said, "I've built it in the computer. It's going to do that." And he'd go rumbling off. And he would lay it out full size. Come back. "Okay, it's a straight line that cuts to the floor."
Yeah.
Or you'd give him a really complicated piece of geometry and go like, "I have no idea how to break this down for you." And he said, "Just give me the final thing."
yeah,
And he would just start laying it out on the floor
Yeah.
and go, this and this and this. You'd come in, there'd be this huge drawing, and it was just a template. He'd just build to it. Pieces go up, and you go, "Yeah, that's what I thought it would be." Good.
yeah.
The only
They were
time I ever
awesome.
saw anybody laying something out like that was when I was visiting Pinewood after a show, and the construction people they'd build balustrades and railings full scale
Yeah.
and have them on the wall so that you could put a person there. You know exactly where their hand was going to be or where the costume had to be or whatever. And these guys would lay out that kind of structure,
And Gary
full
was-
scale. Unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like it, right? I'm a little hick from Canada.
Well,
And this guy, and Gary York, could do that. And I walked in one day to the shop, and there he is, and he's got the entire floor. And you know, most people would look at it and say, we're wasting space. This guy is spending the smart money and thinking about how I'm going to do that.
Because I got to
And
do it
boom,
8 times
worked.
or 10
Every
times.
time.
Yeah.
Every time. And she got to work with this guy even closer.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. He was great.
And he was something else.
But I think one of you just mentioned, like, you know, you were drawing things up on the computer. I mean, this is back in
Stone
19
Age.
Well, you have to use a chisel.
It was nobody was producing working drawings on the computer. I mean, and I think even when you started,
I did
you
very
would-
little where I would finish the drawing on the
Right.
computer.
You would build them. You would
I
model
would
it.
model it, and then I would do rough elevations, clean slices through it that were
Yes.
very precise. Blow them up on the Xerox machine.
Yes.
Because you only had an 8x10
This is
printer.
Xerox. This is our friend.
And then tape them down and then throw a sheet of vellum on them and then draw.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't get any real,
Well, the programs.
Textures
The
or-
programs weren't available.
it only finally hit, even after we'd left Battlestar,
Yeah.
was when I finally
Yeah.
got to do is what I wanted to do.
Well,
on Stargate.
that'll extend into what Battlestar story, which he's interested in. I know he's interested in that, but anyway, I'll going back to the beginning when he showed up and finally called me. I discovered that he had been. I had known him from Montreal and Toronto and Calgary. Having a very talented drawing, what unbelievable. Bridget as well, unbelievable drawings. You know, freehand, drafting, whatever, beautiful. I mean, you look at this stuff and you just want to cry, you know? It's fantastic, it's art. In any event, this guy is onto a computer, like he took to that, like, and Doug, you have a math background as
Yeah.
well, right? Which explains what the Gary York did. So I discovered he is into computers at this time, and I talked about the green screen, and Bridget mentioned the green screen, and everybody's, ooh, you know.
the
So
green
now we got the
screen.
green screen and the computer guy. Well, boy, are we
Shiny,
smoking
shiny.
hot or what, huh? Son of a bitch, we got her rolling now, boys.
I had to write. We wanted a computer for the art department.
Yes.
And I had to write in a letter to Ron French why a computer in the art department could be useful. And so it I guess he fell for it, and we bought an Apple.
Yeah.
And that was when, like, the only reason that we got the Apple was because my sister was in graphic design, and she said, anything else, you know, go with whatever the other computers were. And she says, but if you're doing graphics, you're going to want to get an Apple. And
I think you could buy Apple shares at $10 a
yeah,
share.
Yeah,
we
right.
did, wouldn't we?
Should have done that.
We coulda, shoulda.
Instead of a computer.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, Doug continued to develop the computer skills, and ultimately, if I came over and go into the Battlestar thing, he was off at some other show, and he had been taking I'm a computer dummy, right? I look at it. The first computer I ever had, I borrowed from Mary. I put it on my desk at the office, Stargate office, and I said, I got to learn this thing. I hate it, but I have to learn it. And I started it. I hit the on button, and up comes fixed disk failure. And his office is just outside of mine, and I said, hey, Doug, what does fixed disk failure mean?
Buy and marry a new computer.
I had to buy her a new computer. I just turned the goddamn thing on. I didn't
No,
touch
you
it.
you weren't allowed to go near
And
the
people would
computers.
see me coming and
Yeah,
hide
like, no, you
You did have an energy field.
no
right?
touching the computers. You stand over there, and no touching the props.
Oh, God.
You just look at them. They're just for looking
This
at.
is it.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
show you.
Because it would break. Oh, Jesus. So back to him, back to Doug. So I think Ken was gone at this point.
Yeah.
And so
Go
I
on,
looked,
to another show.
No,
yeah,
we're going
the big show.
much
Oh,
further.
you're talking about on Arrow.
And so I go to visit Doug at this computer school. And it's like taking a sea captain and showing him how to run a rowboat, right? It's like, why? It's like he knows everything. So I go and I see what he's doing. And I said, wow. Because he's doing illustrations at this point. He wasn't doing illustrations before. He was doing working drawings and that kind of stuff. But I see that he's doing illustrations. And I'm looking for an illustrator.
Yeah, we're
So then when we got, was it Arrow?
It was on
It's
Arrow.
on
It was
Arrow.
the last season
Yeah.
of Arrow.
Then I says to myself, I found my illustrator.
you must have been, because you were involved in the second bunker. So I think
Yes.
you did, because
Yeah.
you did
Yes.
the illustration.
Yes, that's what
You
it-
modeled that for us.
So he wasn't, really interested in it, but I convinced him.
Yeah.
I said, you're going to be the illustrator. Because Bridget had introduced me to another cat, very talented man, and it's going off topic a bit, Rodrigo.
Oh yeah, Rodrigo. It's fantastic.
Incredible
Yeah,
talent.
yeah.
Again, I keep coming back to the same thing. I find these people, or somehow we bump into each other, that are incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Rodrigo, a designer, incredibly nice human being. I pair him with Bridget and Doug,
Yeah.
and I'm
Well-
golden again. I really am.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because Rodrigo will come up with an idea. And again, this whole everybody sees everybody else's work, right?
Yeah.
And what do you do? And then you look at that and say, well, try this. Or they come to me and say, that's wrong. That's usually their line with me. So it's that whatever I'm doing is wrong. But
You were saying that I wasn't interested in being an illustrator, which is kind of right, because to me, illustrators are Ken Rabehl.
Ken Rabehl.
yeah.
People who can take a pencil, a brush, a magic marker, bang, it's
Yeah.
done. I build entire things in the computer, texture them, light them, and produce renderings, and then we'll work on that a bit in post stuff. But
And
But it's
amazing.
still-
Yeah, and amazing. Yeah.
yeah, but to me it was a whole different process. So I never thought of it as illustrating, because not only can I illustrate, we can just hand this to the special effects department if you want, and they can, because that's where I ultimately thought I would be heading, was into complete visualization. And the industry has gone there. They now have
Yeah.
the volume stages and that. And the industry went there and I didn't. but it was because Ken
Ken had a different
such an
process.
amazing talent for just,
Yeah.
he'd just see stuff in his head.
But
And it would be on
he,
paper.
he in the later years with us, but also he was working on a computer.
He was starting to get there because everyone had to.
He did, but it was always like his work always started by hand.
Yeah.
And then he would take that into the computer,
Yeah.
do Photoshop work with it, but it always started,
Yeah.
everything he did started as a pencil sketch
Yeah.
or a pencil perspective. He
Yeah.
had this system of working at perspectives, which it would take up like half of the art department with his lines and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And he was an interest. He was really obsessive about his art. Like
Yes.
it was like my frustration as the art director was to get it off his desk
Yeah.
and
Oh,
hand it off to the person
All of
who
us.
needed it.
I-
And he was just like, no, I'm not. I'm just. And you look, and he's like shading the stars, and you're like, okay, that's enough shading on the stars. I think we can hand this off to the
I
visual
know,
effects people
I
now.
know.
And he's just like, I'm not done yet. Just not done.
Bridget, I remember I had a flight booked to fly to LA to make a presentation to the executives at the studio. I could have been a presentation for Battlestar, I'm not sure.
Was, yeah.
So anyway, and there's Ken finishing off one of our concept drawings. And Tech Talk, the limo's going to pick me up, Ken. If I'm not on that flight, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to kill you. And he kept at it and at it. And I said, Ken, I'm going to rip that goddamn thing right off of your table. I want it now. The limo was outside, motors running, and he's still trying to fiddle. And I'm going, you don't
amazing
understand,
thing-
Ken.
The amazing thing is, though, he could also do the most amazing sketches about this big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
In seconds.
Yeah.
Literally, he would be, I remember him going on a bus or it could have been a limo to the airport with a director
Yeah.
and a script.
Yeah.
And they would be storyboarding a sequence.
Yeah.
And on the script page, he would draw these little squares about this big. And they would talk. Director said, I'm going to do this kind of shot over here. We're going to push you to do this. Ken would scribble and do this. And then he would come back to the art department.
Storyboard.
And then he would storyboard it. But it's like his little sketches were the best. It was sort of like, Ken, blow them up,
Yeah.
print them 8 by 10, send
You're
them out.
done.
You don't need to do anymore. He would then work them because
He really did. I talked like towards the end of his life there. We talked about it, and he really said that he just when I say he was obsessive, it really was. He just had to do. He would picture what he wanted in the picture would be in his head.
yes, and he wanted
And
to
he had to keep working on it until what he had in his head was what he saw
Yeah.
on the page. And if they didn't match up, he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy to let it go.
Yeah.
well, the people that he kind of modeled himself after. And I think he even went to LA and
He met
trained
Sid
with
Mead,
one.
Yeah,
another great
Sid Mead
illustrator for you guys.
and but also Ralph McQuarrie,
yeah.
Yes.
who did a lot of the
Star Wars.
Star Wars stuff, and you could see that that's what Ken was looking for, because he
Yeah.
went down there, talked to the guys, saw their work, and went, oh, that's what I want to do. So that's what he
And
wanted.
that's what
So
he
that
did.
the rough, and that's what
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
It's because when you got a finished sketch from Ken, whether it was pencil sketches were really nice. His finished paintings, when he got to paint, which wasn't often enough, were stunning.
Mhm.
You know, and then to me, his tiny little thumbnails. I would kill to be able to do that, because it was just, wow. It's like you've got the whole thing there.
I ruined his hands, I think, because I asked him to do original paintings It was
For
for,
the
for an
Afghanistan.
Afghan
No,
series
that
of
was-
paintings or whatever.
That was,
And ever after that, he always had to wear
no,
a
that
support
was,
on his
that
hand.
was the beginning of the
Was that the
ALS.
beginning of the ALS?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it's
and
also
those were
incredibly
the
fine.
first symptoms.
Yeah.
And he put it off to his shoulders or strain or whatever.
Yeah.
But
That was
the
the beginning. Yeah.
he developed ALS and it affected his unfortunately his shoulders and first.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah, ultimately all musculature.
Yeah.
those are probably his last paintings that he
Yeah,
ever did.
they were, yes.
They were,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
I hope that they're around
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well, Gary York had ALS too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah.
How do you feel?
Lucky to be here.
It's a black humor. You have to-
Yeah. I
yeah.
haven't hit any of those yet.
Yeah.
Speaking
Wow.
about dark humor,
It's
what about the fire?
oh the fire, that thing.
That
Let's
was
just keep on
funny.
going. Now let's just incinerate it.
Now the fires.
That's what is that what you guys call a
Okay.
segue?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
That was okay, our recollections might be different. I think it was a Thanksgiving long weekend.
It's definitely a long weekend. I think it was the American one, wasn't it? Or was it?
Could be,
Yeah.
could have been.
Because
It
a lot of
could have
people were away. A lot
We
of people
were
out of
able-
town.
Just shot Solitudes.
We had
Frozen the
just
set
shot
with farm wood.
Solitudes. And that, so that was in stage 6 and it was a massive, it was, I don't think we've used that much styrofoam on anything
I don't
before.
think it's legal anymore.
It was,
Wall to wall, yeah.
wall to wall,
I
and
would've
probably
said
half of the volume of the stage was styrofoam.
Yeah.
With the elephant door at the end, and then 2 little crew doors, and that's it for getting in and out of the stage. So it was. I think Tom, we were done shooting it, and it was sort of, well, we might as well just get rid of it now. Clear out the stage. We don't know what we're doing in there next, but it's not going to be a glacier. So, and this isn't
Yeah,
something
let's
that we
strike
can
it.
flip into something else. So we'll strike it. And I think it was like maybe the Thursday, the day before the long weekend that we did that.
I remember that picker that came in there. This guy had like a sharpened point on this. They had the big arm, then a sharpened point kind of thing, and he would literally be picking up 40, 50 feet in the air, and a whole wall. It was amazing
It was
to
great.
watch. I was very impressed
Yeah.
with that guy. And then because this is a real full-size crane, right? Then he just run over the stuff
Yeah.
and crush it. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
This
They struck it in
and
a
that's
People always say, you should enjoy watching your work going up. It was more fun watching it come down.
it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying.
But if
it's,
that
it's,
had not been done,
if that
the
had not
stage
been
would
done,
have gone.
yeah, we would
Because I remember in Toronto when I was working in the theater,
yeah,
Toronto Arts Productions had a set they were building, a lot of styrofoam, a lot of it on the ground, a lot of panels set like this up against the wall.
yeah.
It was all being glued together
Yeah.
with contact cement.
Mm.
Somebody
And then somebody
flicked
welded
an ash
something.
somewhere.
Yeah, but what caused
The
the
whole thing
fire,
just whoomp.
the set was
The
gone.
set was gone, fortunately.
And I remember that I would leave at the end of the day and I generally walk through the sets, the stages. Because everybody's gone, it gives me a chance to look and see where we are, refresh my own little mind and stuff like that. And I remember there was a guy who went fishing with somebody and he drowned that weekend. And he was down, and he was a carpenter. And he was in the stage, kind of wandering around, and I saw him, and the stage was empty. And you know how you go through the trap, the sound trap?
Yeah,
You go through that, and there was a light,
like a stumble light.
a stumble
Yeah,
light,
yeah, house light.
above
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
door. And it was it wasn't touching,
Yeah,
but it was kind of like,
I think they've been doing some repairs
It
on
was something,
on
yeah.
the.
it wasn't where it should have been.
Yeah, and
And
but they were those
what-
super hot halogens.
what caused the fire was it was gyprock, which doesn't burn. You use that as a firewall when you're building things. But there were wooden studs in between. That's what started it on fire. So the fire was within the walls and the ceiling and everything else, right? It didn't get through to the main set, the main stage, which was the Stargate set.
By that much.
But there was
By
smoke and shit everywhere. And there
layer.
were people in there with the things that dissipate smell,
Oh yeah.
and they were with toothbrushes and cleaning
That
forever.
stage always smelled of wood smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
and
like 5, 8 years later, you could still that little barbecue smell, like
Yeah.
just that little.
Yeah.
It it
but
wasn't
so,
unpleasant.
so
or anything.
I finished my little walkthrough, and then that weekend, Mary was shooting in Charleston, is it North Carolina or South Carolina? Charleston, I think it's South Carolina. And I was going to go visit her because I was chasing her at the time. I chased her all over the goddamn planet. In any event, so there I am on some beautiful beach in Charleston, which is a lovely city, by the way, a lovely city. And staying in this stilt house, and it was fantastic. Shrimp boats out there. My phone rings, my cell phone rings, and it's Andy Makita. Richard. Hey, Andy, how you doing? He says, we've had a fire. You gotta get over here right away. I'm going, Andy, I'm in South Carolina, man. And he was explaining what happened, and I said, no. It was one of those, no, can't be, impossible, right?
It took them.
Who would
I forget
believe it?
how long to put it out because it was a smoldering fire. They opened up the wall, and went in, and they thought that they had it, but it had crept like over there. So
Yeah.
it was just like,
Yeah.
it was a smoldering fire, so it traveled all through this. It was a huge wall between the studios. And eventually they just said, well, this is all got to come down. And so they ended up knocking the whole wall down. So now what used to be 5 and 6 was just, there's our standing set. Now we're looking into stage 6 and this huge wall that used to be there. And it was the space between the studio wall and the standing set was
That far.
that much. So there was that much. And the
Yeah.
I'm assuming 1/2-inch drywall, probably 3/4
Yeah.
for soundproofing, and that's how close the fire came to our standing set.
Taking out the Stargate.
And it would have gone up. It would have gone up just like
Oh.
because it's all like sets are just built of
I
1
told
by
you that
6s
it
and
was cotton about 14 feet, right? What do you think
Yeah.
cotton burns like?
So that was right. I mean, I think that was just right at first season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, because it was Soliloquies that was that Martin had been shooting,
Yeah.
and that was one of his first directing
Yeah.
debuts. I don't know if it was his debut, but it was
I'm not sure.
pretty
Can't recall.
close.
Close to
Because
it.
he was the first AD.
First AD.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucky. We were lucky.
We were very
Oh,
lucky.
Yeah.
No, it could have been a total disaster.
Well, I had a lovely weekend.
Yeah, I did too. I didn't hear about it until I turned up, that morning to open. No, I must have heard because I would have been there to open set.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe we weren't shooting in the standing set. We must have been shooting something else.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
But we,
Yeah, and I'm sure
worked
they weren't shooting for a while in that standing set because
No.
it was pretty.
I don't remember it being shut down in there
I
though.
think for a couple of days it was.
Yeah, well, maybe a couple
I
of
think they kind of threw
yeah,
things.
they readjusted the schedule or something like that. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about building the Atlantis gate based on the design of the SG-1 gate?
I can. Can you?
I can.
What do you think?
So they wanted it to be different because they wanted it distinctly different than the SG gate. And by that time, computers had developed to the point where, computers and lighting, was it lit with LEDs? It must have been lit with LEDs. So the LEDs were like the new thing, and there was a steep learning curve for them. I'm still learning. And so the lighting guys got at it, and we worked out the pattern for the different constellations using, LEDs for the constellations, and they had to program in all the different all the different addresses, and they also wanted the gate to fold down because it was we wanted to use the main Atlantis, the gate room, as a sort of a flexible space, so we could drop the gate, change the back wall, slide it back and forth, and then turn it into like a different part of the Atlantis facility. So the gate had to be able to be flopped down, stood up, and then programmed with all the lighting. So it worked. Yeah, I thought it worked well. It was pretty.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was made of rubber.
It was cast. Yeah, it was cast. It was cast. It pretty similar to what the SG gate was. That whole thing, like we had by that time, the model shop that grew out of, it started as a tent in the back of the effects stage.
Yeah.
When we in the
Side, yeah.
on the pilot,
Yeah.
when we were building the snake helmets and everything, and those were all sculpted and then cast. That was a
Did Sal
nightmare.
build those for you? The gate? Cast the gate?
That was Tom and those guys.
Was Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, Corrado was in there at that time? Michael?
No,
He was, Michael was in the props department.
Oh, Michael was in. Yeah,
On
Michael
Stargate.
was in props.
Casting and all that stuff.
Yeah, he might have been there. He
Yeah.
might have. There was a big crew. Like
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
big.
Sal Tequila was the head of that department when we did the pilot.
Right, when we did the
For Stargate.
pilot, and then Gord Bellamy took
Yeah,
over,
yes.
and then they just continued. Like we started, they started in the tent with no temperature control, trying to cast, and it was
It was terrible.
terrible. No proper ventilation, and then when the construction moved to Norco, they sort of gave them an area, and that's when they started first of all with proper ventilation and space and different areas for different tasks, because they had Paco doing,
Yeah.
who's an electronic engineer, doing again all the programming, the robotics. Really, I mean, thank goodness he's came to us. Otherwise, he would have been, I don't know, building bombs somewhere or something. But really, super smart guys with just a real depth of talents and skills. I think Michael Corrado was there doing upholstery, I think, in the model shop or something like that. No, he was casting. You're right, he was casting
He was
too.
on the bench, yeah.
Yeah, and that model shop just grew and grew and grew until it was nearly took up pretty much the same real estate as the construction shop.
Yeah.
And they were building everything. Like we'd rent the the spacesuits from LA. We'd bring them up here, and it would be a huge deal. They'd come with the technicians, and and so it really limited what we could do. And they were bulky and awkward, and the faceplates they'd fog up, and they didn't have internal lighting to light the actors. So then Paco and the guys said, okay, well, we can do this, and we can do something better. And they built the helmets so that they were, they were mic'd so that you could hear the director. Because the ones that came up that originally we had, the actors couldn't hear the director, and that was a problem. And then they built in integrated lighting, because now we had LEDs. before that we had those MRs that were like a little easy bake oven, right? It was so hot. So the LEDs were cool enough that you could put them, integrate them into the helmets. Yeah, we had,
Why is he
remember,
after sweating in there?
honestly, there was one where we had some sort of glass or plexi box that RDA had to be in, and we built it, and
Yes.
we had these MRs built into it, and it looked really pretty. And then we had to put all these holes in the top because it really just turned it into an oven. We couldn't leave it.
Please do not bake the lead actor.
Yeah, no. So that made a huge difference. And then the model department, just as all these things were coming out, they were just on them. Like, I don't know what the expression is. The first time I saw 3D printing was in the art department, and it was just sort of like, how could this work? Like, how could you print in 3D? And they're like, well, here's how it's done. And it was the very, very first 3D printers, and Gord was in, like, buying them right off the bat. Oh, and CNC, which was
Unheard of.
it was on the original gate. They CNC'd the pieces, but that was, again, for them, that was leading edge of technology. And it was being done for a feature by, I don't know, we started using CNC almost right away.
Yeah.
And then Boyd started basically CNCing all this, all the intricate pattern work and stuff like that. And you think about all the, like, the hieroglyphs and all the texture that you see in all of those sets, like, all of that was built by the construction department with the model shop.
Yeah, as we evolved from the first startup, from the pilot, what we wound up with was a complete art department, construction shop, metal shop, prop shop, fabrication, paint. There were more. We had a Pinewood, basically.
Yeah, and it only got bigger.
Because they were all special, right? And they all had something to do with making this thing, whatever that thing was, even better.
Yeah. And
so when you look at it, I looked at the box that David sent me. You should look at this because it's totally CNC. That box over there, that's totally CNC.
Yeah.
I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
And from where that is, from where we started.
Oh.
Well, I remember because we used to have Boyd in the art department.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a sign. He was the sign guy who normally would be in the construction department in some dusty old corner. And we said, no, we want him in the art department.
We want him in a closet in our room.
Yeah. We kept him in the closet. There was a door.
He was there, and it would start with cutting vinyl signage.
Yeah.
And then it became, could we decorate this box with some vinyl decoration? Go to that.
With dimension.
Well, then it moved to dimension because we discovered sandblast mask. And sandblast mask is sort of a rubbery substance about 1/8 of an inch thick.
Yeah.
And Boyd would cut out really intricate patterns in that, and that would get put on there. So now suddenly you had a flat surface, but you had the dimension with hieroglyphs, and you could paint it and rub it, and it would get antique. Then you'd start going, let's do 2 layers of the sandblast separately, so we get 2 different layers of detail. And then CNC would be occasionally done, but it usually sent out.
Yeah.
Boyd would prepare the files.
Yeah.
Then did he eventually move over to the model shop? And because they started CNCing in the model shop.
Yeah, he stayed.
Because by the time Universe was there, Boyd was CNCing permanently over in the model shop.
Yeah.
And they would do, with the CNC, you'd be cutting in, instead of 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch, you'd cut through 1/4 and 1/2 inch medite.
Yeah.
So you'd have a floor with a cutout pattern. And it just, sometimes they would be CNCing things that I kind of look at and go, you could just cut 4 strips of wood and slap them together there and it'd be faster.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
But it was like, it was a time when things were changing through Stargate. and through Battlestar.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar for Richard and I, you were still on Stargate, but that was when we changed from storyboarding happened by pencil. Okay. Then it would be by pencil, scan it into the computer to produce PDFs so they'd be printed and sent out. Then it became scan it into the computer, do some quick Photoshop work instead of marker work on it, send it out for distribution. Scan it, do complete paint overs in the computer, or eventually start doing the roughs in the computer, and then eventually even the original illustration would be done, starting there and go all the way through.
I could tell you what they were really doing on Battlestar. I went out on a survey one day by myself. Very unusual, because usually you bring your right hand with you. You weren't there, but I point to you as the art director. You usually bring your right hand with you, because anytime you're by yourself, you're going to get worked over something.
You're not allowed out by yourself.
And usually they don't let me up. So anyway, I'm by myself to survey this area, and it's basically a gully, and there's a lot of greenery, and some body has to be put in it, and they're going to find them. And so there's just me going out with my camera and my notes and whatever. By the time I get back, Mary's coming to visit me that afternoon, and she starts laughing hysterically. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And she hands me this record cover back when they had albums, right? And it said Richard Sings on this album cover. And there's the photo of me in that location, sort of crouched down looking, because I was standing in for the person that had to be there. So I don't know how they got a hold of the photo that fast. But they had created a full album cover with Richard Sings of me. And she was just, and the whole office knew about it, right? So they wanted to see my reaction. That's what they were really doing when I went out by myself. And you should have heard her howling. That's unbelievable. And it took her a second, right? What? Richard Sings?
Well, and that's another thing that was great about that department, was the whole show was people still had fun.
Yeah.
I remember once, I think I'd gone to Las Vegas for a Photoshop convention. So I was away for like 4 days. I came back, and on my desk, there's a pinned up t-shirt with the letters DYKM in the style of DNYK, or DKYN, or NY, Donna Karen, New York, when it's DYKM. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And Tom and the guys in the shop had printed it up, and next to it, or pinned on it, is this thing that says, "Doug, you're killing me." Because I'd done something or other, and sent them off some detail.
You had just made an angled wall with a detail and some
and then gone off, and he came back and went, killing me. But there was stuff like that all the time. It was just fun people to work with. Because everybody was really good at what they did.
Yeah, that was part of it. It was like,
it's-
we can't do this. And we're like, yeah, we can. Unfortunately,
No, it's true. It's absolutely true.
And there you
The
just,
one thing I hate about the film business and the television business is the early morning calls. I'm a night person, I told you this. Come 10 o'clock, I'm just starting to go, Come 7 in the morning, you just don't. It got to the point, Bridget wouldn't let anybody come in. I would show up at the office at 9:30, maybe 10 sometimes. And she'd say, "You don't go into what's on, you give them 15 minutes.
yeah.
And then you can go, you got anything to ask him, you go to her first."
Yeah.
And heaven forbid the poor person that went in to see me as my car door closed. Yeah, I hated going to the office, but I always did it, and when I got there I was fine.
Yeah.
And I never heard anybody complain about the hard work, or I know it was hard work, and I know they would be putting their extra hours in. And I would always say to them, you gotta go do something, you go do it.
Yeah.
if your work is done, I don't care what you do. If it takes you an hour, I don't go. Go stand by a river and
But it,
watch it, you
Yeah,
know, whatever. Because that's going to make you a better person.
yeah, and we all worked together as a team, and there was like, I always said it doesn't matter how big the project is, if everybody is working in the same direction together and you can rely on the whole team, you can do anything.
Yeah.
I've worked on way smaller shows where, you know, you think you've got the project, like, you know, you think you're on the right track, you go in there early, you start to get everybody sorted so everybody knows what they're doing and what the, you know, what the task is. And then by 6:30, it's all changed. And you have to go back and you have to start again, come back in early the next morning, reorganize all the information, get it out there, and then hope it stays. And there was very little of that on Stargate. I mean, if anything, if there was a big shift like that, like I think the biggest problem we had, or one of the challenges we had, was when Amanda got pregnant and she didn't have her baby at the right time. And they had it all worked out so that, you know, she'd have her baby here and then they, you know, they do this episode and that episode. But it didn't work out that way. And that was like, oh, things aren't going to plan. But the whole production was it had to be very efficient, like very, people were able, like, you knew what your task was, you knew how to get there because you had all your team, and you moved forward. There's no
The cast was very respectful of their department as well,
Yeah.
and construction and paint, and that's everybody from RDA to I mean, I remember Don Davis, right?
Yeah, he's come and hang
He
out.
would come up, you know, to the art department as soon as there was a break. He'd come wander around. And said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, look at that! That's really cool. Oh yeah, why'd you do that?" He loved the art department, right?
He was he was an artist. He was an artist
He-
himself. He did
He just loved
beautiful
it.
prints.
And they would all be, you know, appreciate all of the work that everyone had done, and
all the art. Our art department was part of the production office. You know, the writers were down there. We were down there. And we had these screens that we put up when we first moved in there, where we would put all the art, all the work that was being done up on these screens, so that anybody at any time could come in and see what was being done.
Yeah.
And they could look at it, they could respond to it, and they could see the process. And we were all there, you know, either with our drawing or on the computers, but we were all there. They could see, and we had lots of people coming into the art department. It was a pretty social place.
It was. Yeah.
We had props and
Props.
we had props, set deck, art department, Boyd, all in the end of the
in one area.
one area.
From where the kitchen wall
Yeah.
ends to what here.
Yeah, it was cozy, but we made it
But you could walk down 150 feet or 100 feet or whatever, and you'd be in
the
Brad's
stage.
office,
Oh yeah,
right? And you would have passed through the production office.
yeah,
So everybody got to see everybody.
yeah.
And it wasn't far. If you had a problem, you could
Or an idea.
down that hall, or an idea.
Yeah.
And because it was open, you got to see what everyone else was doing. Because we'd be working on different shows. I mean,
Yeah.
if I was doing a big set on a
And
show,
it goes back to that
Ivana would
thing
be
about,
working
yeah,
another set down the road.
Yeah.
So you'd kind of look over and, oh, that's nice, yeah. And you get competitive,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
the work gets better and better and
Yeah,
better.
yeah. Yeah, you're right. Everybody fed off of each other. Yeah.
it's all very open, and there's no. I mentioned the other day talking with David. You know, some people that to hide,
Yeah.
not in our department.
Yeah.
It's wide open, man. You want to come by? I'd ask janitor, cleaning people, whoever, what do you think of this? They'd tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, this is very cool. What does it do? Who cares what it does? Do you like it? You know?
Blows up galaxies.
Yeah, it blows up galaxies.
My only real battle ever on Stargate was how much of the shared table
Oh,
with Ivana that I could get. Because we had opposite, she had her drafting table here. I had mine just over there, going that
I
way.
think I had
I had a table here. She had a table over there. In between us, we had a nice long table. It was 4 feet wide. It's like, common table, we'll share it. So
Yeah,
we
no.
did. And then you'd be like, then you'd put a drawing down and shift over a little. And it was common too because the phone was on it.
She did that to me on the girl.
But she was on
The,
all
the
the
only
time.
the only phone, it's like, why don't you just put her on Ivana's side? Because she's on the phone.
All the
It's
time.
not me.
That's not an exaggeration.
I'm learning to say hello in Czech. So can put her on
I'm
first.
pretty, I think I'm fluent in Czech.
But it was like, and we were quite respectful of each other's work. But it was like,
Well, they fought all the
you'd
time.
push over and then
She would fight with
I'd come back and stuff would be pushed back over onto my side. I'd put another big drawing down so that it went over that one.
and then when she got tired of annoying him, she'd start with Ken.
Right.
Because it was great. I used to actually bring gasoline
Oh,
to the
her
fire.
and Ken.
Well,
Oh, they
because
get
would
into the
argue all the
conversation.
time, right?
They would.
And I'd walk by and I'd start talking to them and I'd throw some controversial subject out and I'd walk away and watch them just.
And there I am, right in the middle. There's Ken, there's Ivana. I'm listening to them. Just
And
like,
I'd walk out 20 minutes later, they're still going at it. And then he's got to sit next to her as she's talking to her friends in Czech complaining about Ken. It was great.
That was
They've been
great.
complaining about me. I don't know. I don't speak enough.
And poor Bridget is sitting there
Right
shaking
in the
her
middle.
head going,
Right in the middle of it all.
It was a great department.
Yeah,
It really
it
was.
was.
It was talented people.
And then you put the Davidsons in there with,
Oh yeah.
Mark?
with Dan sister.
Oh, Jesus.
They used to prank each other, and they would go
sure.
back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then I started noticing this smell in the art department. It was just kind of vile. It was just like, I'm like, okay.
Is this
And
about the dogs?
No, I'm like, okay, I get it, you guys, this is funny, but whoever has hidden cheese
Yeah. Sure. go
in
and find it.
somebody's air, you got to get rid of it now, because we all have to work in here, and it's getting really, really, really bad. And they're both like, no,
It wasn't us.
not us. And the smell would go away, and then it would just come back. And we even had them go and check for rats up in the. It was vile, right? And it went on for, I think, and it was through the summer too. Oh, it's just gross.
Yeah.
And then finally one day I walk in and there's one of these office plants that's now out on the stairwell. I'm like, oh, what's this? And they're like, well, I guess somebody had emptied a latte into this plant. And it was just like fermenting and turning into the worst sort of cheese. And every time it was water, the smell would come back. But I was sure it was I was sure it was Dan.
I'll tell you what about Dan and his partner in crime at the time, and I can't remember
Oh,
his name.
I don't know.
Wasn't
Was
Terry?
it Terry? No, the guy
It
with
was
the
the guy that
Boxster.
bought the Boxster.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that the art department is over here, offices, executives and writers and such are over here, production office is here, in the middle, and there's a stairwell and an elevator in here somewhere in the middle. Now you have to understand that there were a lot of dogs involved.
Oh,
Not in the
yeah.
art department. Occasionally Bridget would bring her
No,
one
they
dog,
were there.
well trained,
Not bad.
well behaved. Me has been one of the people. Her dog. The other dogs, they're just all over the place, right? They're running around and they're pissing here and this and that. Finally, Andy McGuire, who was the guy that called me in South Carolina, the PM at the time, one of the writer's dogs took a dump under his chair in his office, and Andy hit the roof, right? What the hell? Jesus. So all of a sudden there was kind of this big thing about dogs. Now, people would still bring their dogs, but they were watching them like hawks. So, Dan Sissons and his partner in crime had this brilliant idea. And you have to go to the common area to get your coffee and muffin or whatever. And all of a sudden, there's all this big kerfuffle in the production office. It goes on for a few days, and I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Some dog is peeing everywhere. There's a puddle here, there's a puddle there, there's a puddle there, and they have to clean it up, right?" And I'm going, "Well, I don't have a dog, so well, I don't." But it is kind of annoying seeing how well you're looking after all of your dogs. What I found out later was it was Dan Sissons and his partner in crime who would take, this, boxes of apple juice, walk by, squirt a little here, squirt a little there, and then grab their coffee and quietly go away, just to create hell. Right? It was hilarious.
Yeah,
The office would be in, furor.
I don't know if anybody else knows that story.
Well, maybe. There's always editing.
I think it was Brad's dog, who was a puppy at the time, who was getting blamed for it.
Well,
Great secrets of Hollywood.
Brad who?
Yeah, very. Oh,
Yeah. And there's another one that Dan and again his partner in crime we're in the boardroom, and there's a special effects guy who they didn't get along with.
is it Ray?
No, it wasn't Ray. No, they loved Ray. It was another guy. And so, they lay out it's a long boardroom table, and there's Dan and the special effects guy, and they're on that side, and I'm on this side, and Bridget beside me, and ours. And the effects guy is trying to explain something to everyone at this meeting, production meeting. His phone goes off, and there's nobody there. He hangs it up. As soon as he puts it down, it rings again. This must have happened a dozen times. And he's getting more and more flustered because he can't say anything because his phone keeps going off, right? Rumbling or ringing, no, rumbling, I think, or buzzing. Driving this guy crazy. And he finally, I don't know if he finally just said, "Forget about it, we'll do this later." But he couldn't get it out, and it drove him nuts, and nobody could figure out and he's getting more and more flustered, right? It was just a joy to watch this happen. And again, it was Dan who put him on speed dial. He was sitting next to him. As soon as the guy picked his phone up, he'd hang up. Dan would hang up. As soon as the guy clicked off, Dan would ring again. All under the table. And he's sitting right beside him, just driving this guy crazy. just because he could. Oh. But first-rate props, guys. First-rate. Fun aside, and it was fun. The end result was always top drawer. Never had a problem, never had a can't be done or none of that nonsense. It can always be done, one way or another.
Bridget, you were, like we've heard a lot about, the writers would always write, "Will they come to a village?"
Oh,
Boy, we've got to create something. You guys, season 9, had a masterful way to solve that.
we built the village. Yeah, with the idea that that was great. That was a great build. It started the end of the season before that, where at the end of the season we would. Well, we built sort of at the end of the effect stage. We built a cavern. And we put up big site, built a wall, and did a little thing in there, and they were like, oh, that worked out really well, quite, looked quite good. And we were all nice and cozy in the stage rather than, by that time we weren't even shooting up in GVRD anymore because it was shut down for some reason. They were building something, some tunnel or something. That had been our go-to place, going all over the Lower Mainland, building these villages, and we built some really nice ones. And we built a lot of tent villages, but we had lost a lot of, we'd lost the sand dunes in Richmond, we'd lost the GVRD, we were going further and further and further afield, and it rains a lot here. So at the beginning of, that was season 8?
Season 9. was
Season
the
9.
village.
So season 9. So yeah, Brad and the guys and Rob and everyone came to me and they said, could you, build a village in the effects stage? And I'm like, yes, I can. And it was the Priory. That was a beautiful set. That was also the one where we did
Burn.
the burn, which Gary York was involved with. You guys weren't around for this, but we were going to burn a witch, and the burning, platform, whatever you want to call it, was like a labyrinth of the flame. So the flame would travel through this oval towards the witch who was in the center. And that was done practically. I have a photo of Scott from Special Effects doing the we were doing the test burn, and I like to call it like Scott taking the heat. And it worked beautiful. Barb Wilson, who so she was a math major as well, who also went into theater. Go figure. She worked out all the math for, because it had to slope in all the directions, and then it had to be an oval, and it had to be a gradual, like a ramp. So it was a ramp. It was complex, and that was your conversations with Gary continued with her and Barb, and she had worked out the math, and then she presented it, and he's like, I'm not sure about this, and they went through it, and she convinced him that her math was correct, and it worked beautifully. And then the rest of the set was, I think we had inherited the Blade set by this time.
That was at the top.
Yeah, so that was on one half of the effects stage, and then we had the village on the other half of the effects stage. So whatever that, I think the effects stage, so it was the set was 150 feet by, again, however wide that set was, or stage was,
65.
however high it was.
50.
And it went, it filled up the whole space with a big cyc. And we used, I think I did 3 changeovers to it. And that was the idea, was that we would build this space and then we would be able to switch it over to be somewhere else. And I think they continued using it for a number of years after I was gone. I wasn't around at the end. It was part of the reason I had to get out of there was I was looking at all this stuff that we had done, thinking, I don't want to be around here for the strike. The Blade set alone, it was like, how are they even going to take this down? Because that was a 3-level metal structure. Steel, yeah. We had watched it going up. It was right outside my office window, and I had watched them building it. And then when it was done, it was like, wow, this is kind of great. And then when they were done with the movie, we inherited it and got to have our way with it. We did.
best way to
Yeah.
dispose of sets is to go, say, would you guys like this set? You just have to take over the space.
Yeah, I think that the strike on that was not, it was a bit of a deal. But the village, that was all drawn, designed, and built. We had prep at the beginning of the season, like weeks of prep, weeks. I forget exactly how many, but that was a massive build, and it was ready. I don't know if it was ready for. It might have been ready for episode 1. We were introducing.
Yeah, so the cave was in episode 1. Right?
The cave,
Avalon
yeah.
Cave.
Yeah.
Which is last of Prevalence.
Yeah.
The Village in 2.
It was episode 2?
Episode 2.
Oh, that's pretty good. Good on us. Yeah, that was a full everybody drawing. I remember I sketched out basically the 2 elevations, showed them to Rob and Brad, and said, kind of like this, and it was literally like, me hand drawing with pencil crayons, and they said, yeah, sure, great, let's do it. And it was, we divvied it up. At that point I had Rodrigo and Peter, and I think I had a couple of people brought in for the beginning of the season just to get us going. Drew it up, gave it to Tom and Gary and all those guys, and if there were it was sort of, if there were any details that were missing, it was like, I'm right there, just I'll come down and we'll figure something out, because a set that large, you just can't draw every detail in a couple of 3 weeks. And my sort of way of dealing with things was always to get drawings to construction as soon as possible. The sooner that they can be looking at things and working out the big picture, like the big approach to the set, the big strokes, that's the only chance you have. And then the smaller details, they'll come. They'll get sorted out. And that was with Tom and with that was Gary's set.
Yeah.
Well, no, they were all working on it, but if there was a blank area or something looked weird, I'd get a phone call and I'd come down and I'd say, yeah, that does look weird. Let's not do that then. Let's do something else.
Yeah.
But not very much.
It's part of the joy of being close.
Yeah. And it was, walking through that set as it was being put together, 5 times a day, looking at paint treatments as they were being, developed, and sort of going, yep, there, and just keeping everybody moving, keeping the whole job moving forward, making decisions, and then, and then also that allows the other departments like lighting and grips and everything to have their time in there, because if lighting and grips don't have their time, things don't look good. Because, yeah. Anyhow, that was fun. It was a fun set. Because missed it. You were doing other things by that time. You were on Battlestar.
We were building villages elsewhere.
Yeah.
I would like to know if any of you have questions for the other 2 from those days. Question that you would like to ask.
What the hell were you thinking? Wow.
Yeah, take a second and think about it.
The questions that I would ask of them,
You would ask them, or vice versa.
why you didn't listen to me more. It's personally, we shared a lot of stories, and we've got a lot of history. Always have had. I've always been very open with them, and they've always been very open with me if they were going through some sort of thing in their life.
Oh.
we all kind of worked it out together, and I had young kids, and I remember calling Bridget when I was in the jam, and she'd be driving home to Maple Ridge. I said, Bridget, can you pick up a Sailor Moon doll, whatever the hell that is? Because
The Sailor Moon crisis.
Amy's going to have a meltdown, and she doesn't get this
She
thing.
needs this
She
one
needs
doll.
this doll.
And it's in Coquitlam.
Yeah.
And I'm driving right by there.
And she's, stuff like that. It's
Yeah. What was your favorite set, Richard?
my favorite set.
Yeah, of the Stargate sets.
Think carefully.
Not I know there's of the Stargate sets.
The Stargate
Which was
set.
your favorite?
Oh, the first one.
The standing set.
Yeah, the standing
Oh,
set.
okay.
Yeah. Sure.
That's a good
All
one.
of the first one. There was more involved with just the standing sets. It was a whole deal. That whole beginning
Yeah,
of Stargate.
yeah.
We had the pyramid thing, and we had all kinds of stuff going
Well,
on.
that's so I mean, you established the cargo ship.
Yeah.
Cargo ship. Okay, the cargo ship. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, right? So we're building it. We're asked to build this thing,
Yeah.
and we come up with the concepts for it, and we're gonna do this. We want to do like a fancy door, right? And so it's like makes sense that this will be a visual effect door because it's going to be shot for 2 episodes. And then that's it. Then it's gone. Never to be seen again. Like gone, lunch, just like sets do. And then, so that would be then another 6 years later, and the cargo ship is still sitting in stage 2. It's had to be rebuilt because like the whole front screen came out. And it would have to be screwed back in. And it was just like there was nothing for the screws to stick into anymore. So all that had to be rebuilt. And people would come up to me and say, why could this door not have been practical? Because it's a visual effect every time somebody walks in and out of it. And it's like, it was only going to happen twice. Twice it was going to happen. And then it would be gone.
Yeah.
So instead, they ended up doing a visual effect for 8 years.
Well,
I think we're still around.
When you hire a person to design a show, I say to them, and I think I said it to John Smith one time, really pissed him off. I said, am I designing for your budget and resale value, or am I designing for the show? Oh, man, he was pissed. He called me into his office after the meeting. Don't you ever do that to me. John, I'm just trying to point out that we have this set that we're building. It's supposed to look like it's in the Arctic, and I wanted to put those big checker designs on it like they do in the Arctic. So
That was...
helicopters and stuff could see them. And I know that he wanted to resell it or
Was
use
that
it.
the one with the frozen... Oh, no. Anyways.
No, I know he wanted to use it as a granary or something later.
Oh.
And I was saying, no, John, I'm doing it for the show. You're doing it for resale value. Boy, he was pissed. Oh, man. It was really good that I got him that pissed. I said, I still got it, man.
I think I can name a favorite set out of 5 years.
Your son.
It was one of mine, but that's not why it's my favorite. It was the Ziggurat.
Yeah.
The inside of the
The
Ziggurat.
red... Was that the red sand set?
We did get a lot of sand in it, I remember that.
Was that with the toxic sand?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
Inside
But
the gold chip.
There was-
inside of it.
The zig...
there was a
Yes. Okay, I know.
Inside
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Ziggurat was
Yeah.
a sarcophagus.
Yeah.
And it was a rebuild of the set, because we did a lot of sets that we repurposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it started as the Hell set from. It had actually been something before that. Anyways,
Season 3.
it was with the Ziggurat was like you get a script and it says we're inside a Ziggurat.
You have another alien, don't you?
I don't think ziggurats have insides.
So,
I think they're steps that just keep going up, and then you put a little thing on the top of it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of say this at some point. It's like we're inside a ziggurat. Okay, we're inside a, what's the, well, the inside's gonna be the same thing stepped above us. Okay, so we kind of take the basic set that we had, because there were long hallways and there was a big room. And there'd been a long, I think at one point there had been a sloped ceiling in this room. So I just kind of took all that stuff out. Actually, I put the sloped ceiling in that one.
Yeah.
And then stepped in all of the walls with more layers of foam, so that instead of a hallway, it was a hallway that was shaped like that.
Is that when you get the t-shirt?
Might have been. Could have been when that happened. But the most interesting thing was about, and then there was another room that had been a bedroom or something, Hell's bedroom, and then there was a door off of that, and that was another. We want a door that opens like doors we haven't seen.
Yeah.
So this time we built it though, and it kind of split this way and one went up, all covered in glyphs of some kind.
Yeah.
And then on the two walls of the big room were these long things of carving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Long
Was
things
that
of
on the
carvings.
Hell's or was that on the Ziggurat?
No, that's the one he wasn't going to light.
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll get to that part of the story. And inside was also the basically a reproduction of
Yeah, that was
a stela from Hammurabi or something. And so the set was there, and they were working on it for felt like weeks. But every day I'd kind of go in, go a little further. And the sculptures were going up, the bas reliefs, and they were just, here's a good reference. Give it to the guys in the model shop. Bye. And you'd come back and they'd be carving away in foam, and come back in another day and the other one would be carved, and all the textured foam was going up. I'm the guy who likes to build sets that'll burn. Had that one caught fire, it would have gone like that too. But we'd already had a fire, so we probably actually put a good layer of plaster on.
Yeah.
So lots of texture, really rich texture. And as it's being built, every day I go in, it gets quieter and quieter. Because one, there's tons of sound dampening material around. And it's getting really quiet. And then we've gotten past 20 guys in there hammering up foam. We're down to 2 guys carving and another guy's off somewhere else putting details on this. And I say the room's getting quieter and quieter every day you go into them. And then set deck comes in with 2 tons maybe of sand and covers the floors. It was exquisite to go into because it was dark. There was just the stage lights above it. Every time I went in there, I felt like I was going into a tomb. Everyone who went in, it sort of, I think we should have a little bit more of this over there. What? Oh yeah, right. I think we should have a bit more of what you've got over here over on that side. Okay. But it just, and the sand went, eventually we had to take about half of the sand out, or maybe 3/4.
Are you sure that wasn't the toxic
It's a
sand?
different set.
No,
Set? Oh, okay.
because the sand was about this deep.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like,
It's beautiful.
again, you walked in and you were in some foreign land.
You were in
was
a location.
quiet. The doors closed behind you, and the only way you knew you weren't in here was to look up and go, oh, there's a grid. There's lights up there, okay.
Yeah.
So this thing, walking through it on just showing them the set as it was being built, but when it was finished, it was like, you just felt so great.
Wow.
And it felt so real. So we do the tech survey.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
We do the tech survey, going to the production meeting, which I fortunately, I was not in the production
Yeah, he
meeting.
was doing
Oops, sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
not in the production meeting, fortunately. So Richard can take over the story.
No,
from
no,
here.
you guys, I want to hear you tell it.
No, it's your story.
No, I
Richard.
already told
He's
you.
already told it.
You tell
I
it.
told it 2 days ago.
As we're doing the survey, even I'm hearing bits pieces because the director of photography is going, wow, this is great, this is awesome. Yeah, this would be great. We'll just light it with like a couple of flashlights, and we'll go through here, and it'll feel like it's really this abandoned place. And it's like, so we could put up some canvas flats and just. I mean, this thing was so detailed. Everyone who was working on it just did great work. Like guys who were carving were in an old tomb carving. They just felt like that.
Yeah.
And it looked like that. And so I'm like, we're not gonna see anything, guys. So Richard goes into the production meeting, and there were words exchanged when the idea came up in the production meeting that we're just gonna light this with a couple of torches going along. And it's like, we've got $250,000 worth of scenery,
I stood up in that
a
meeting.
shitload of really beautiful carvings on the wall. Like, you know, like you could have flown to Egypt and found this. And it's like, and we're not gonna see it.
And you're not gonna light it?
Because it's like, and I know mentally where it came from. It's like, we're underground, there's no light except what we bring in with us.
For sure.
And it's like, you've watched movies, right? There's always God light coming from somewhere. A pitch black room, you light a match,
It just lights
you
up.
can see the walls 60 feet away from you. We didn't just shoot it with a match, guys.
Oh, God.
So eventually they did light it. It did look beautiful. But to me, it was the feeling.
Yeah.
That was one of the most satisfying
It was.
sets that I'd ever worked on. That you just walked into it every day and you kind of went, holy shit, this feels awesome. And I had it once again on Battlestar with another set. And again, it was because it was self-contained.
Mm.
And you walked in and you're like, holy shit, I'm in a ship. It's like, this is steel. That's, this is all real. And actors feel it when they walk in.
Yeah.
And yes, you can, now you would probably put most of that on a volume screen. You'd build a bit of stuff around them. You'd have some sand on the floor so when they're walking, they're interacting. But this, and now thankfully, at least volume screens still give that to the actor. They get to see the picture. But for a while it was, you went into green screen. For a while I worked on Once Upon a Time, doing virtual sets for that. So you'd walk in and it's like, nice door. It's like, you should see the room that goes with it though. and I did. I knew what room went with it. The designer knew.
Yeah.
The director got it too because it was fed through the camera system. But the actor is still like, nice door.
See, that's the important part he's talking about, because he designed the set to be absolutely brilliant and beautiful, and the actor felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what came through.
And that's
and
what
that's the business we're in.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, great actors, yes, they go onto a volume stage now and they do it. You're given a green screen and some guy with a ball going like this. Okay, the dragon's head is right here. He's fearsome, by the way. He's not a real ball. He's really real. And they do it, and they can put the performance in, and you spend the time with the lighting, and and it's gotten better and better. And I love all that virtual stuff. Really looks good. But we were so lucky,
Yeah.
I mean, several times in my life, actually a third time in my life, I actually reworked on it again. It was not our design. It was Ken Adam
Yeah.
in Calgary
Oh, the tunnels?
with the tunnels.
Oh, yeah. God damn art department. Who said that? Who said that?
That was John
God
Frankenheimer.
damn art department. John Frankenheimer.
We were building
he's a very tall man.
a set of underground caves that a neo-Nazi group was hiding in. And we built them casting real rock in
Brought the Scotties up
plaster.
from LA, yeah.
we we'd talk with the production designer about, oh, we can do like foam stuff, or we can do
Ken Adams,
Yeah.
the production designer.
crinkled paper and then a bit of foam. He's kind of like, no, I don't think so. No, I don't. But it'll be easier. No, I don't think so.
We're going to cast
I'm going to cast it in plaster. Some guys tried to cast, so we found some real caves. Some guys cast them in
No,
plastic.
he and I,
Yeah, I know.
this is in Alberta.
Yes.
He and I, in a 4x4, small 4x4, because the road is like on the edge. Here's a mountain. Here's the road. That's a drop off. There's no line on the road. It's where the Alberta government stored critical documents.
Right.
They dug all these tunnels into a mountainside. I mean, a long way, right? Hundreds and hundreds of feet, and it had trees off of it all. And we found, our locations guy found out about this and said, if you want that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
tunnel, go up there, take some photographs, bring it back, and see if that's what Ken wants. So we go up there. Jesus Christ, that road was like, there's no place to turn around, and I'm driving. And I'm like this far from this wall because it's that narrow, right? And if you go over, you ain't coming back. And anyway, we get in there. Now I gotta turn this car around. Oh man, I was very, very slowly getting down that mountainside because now I'm on the cliff side, on the driver's side. How close can I get? Tuck that mirror in, man.
Yeah, see, I was lucky. I didn't have to go in
And
that car. I was
that's where we set the crew up to get the squeezes to do the casting from that mountainside, interior
Yeah.
of that mountainside.
And then
But no, your story.
they
goes.
cast like thousands of sheets of plaster with straw and horsehair and whatever in it. Built a framework. And then we had
And it was
people
low.
carving, essentially carving, rather, because they did what, maybe 6 or 8 casts. Like these are the masters. And you don't want repetition, so we had a sculptor, a guy named Bryn Finer, who came in and carved the panels into individual chunks and then was going, okay, this will fit here, and then we'll build some rock in here. And when you finish the thing, it had a damp mustiness to it because plaster was still drying.
Right.
Yeah, it was real.
And Ken had taken John Frankenheimer through as they were building, and we built it like you would with a tunneling. We had big beams and a cross beam, and then this stuff was all on the outside. It was all braced from behind with 2x and whatever. And they went through, and Ken was like, do you want this to be just a little higher than we, because you'd be digging a cave, you dig at minimum height. And Frankenheimer was, no, I want the guys to be going, when they reach a beam, they have to duck underneath.
John Frankenheimer is also about 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, so you could always, if you could stand up in the rock part, but when you reached a beam, you duck, and you distinctly do it. But in rehearsal, or when they started to go in to shoot, you hear people walking along, bang! So I think he hit his head about 4 or 5 times on it, because they were all over the place. And it was a fabulous set because if you want to wild it, it's like, yeah, what can we wild?
Anything.
Was Frank. You can wild anything you want, but you can't put it back immediately. You can go and shoot in another part of the cave, we'll put it back up, but you can have, you want a small hole wild here, we'll wild it for this one shot. You want to take out 18 feet of the cave, we'll wild it. And it was a guy with a sawzall, just going through, cutting all the things on the back, pulling it out, they'd do the shots. They were machine gun fights going on in it. Where do you want to put the squibs? You can have
Anywhere.
it anywhere.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of fun with that because they didn't want to plan too much. They wanted to feel what they were going to do the next day. So
Oh, we shot in that thing for
they
weeks.
were there. They were going to shoot for 2 weeks. I think they were there for a month and a bit. So at night after they'd finished shooting, they'd kind of go through what are we going to do tomorrow morning? Well, I'm going to come over here, we're going to do this. Bring in the effects guys, okay, squib this area, squib that area, squib that. They'd be drilling holes all night, packing it up, a little bit of finishing. Come in the next day, shoot that. End of that day, same thing. So it took a long time, but it was again one of those sets. Totally enclosed. You walked in it. You could have been in that cave that you were in, smaller than that cave in the mountains, because it was so
Did we
tight.
do the false perspective in that cave? I think we did one
We
area.
did one tunnel where I got
It was
to.
only like from here to that wall, and we miniaturized, false perspective, miniaturized everything.
Yeah.
I think that we had some small people in there as well, didn't we?
No, I don't think we had any in that
No
one.
people? Well, maybe there's another one. But yeah, we just miniaturized it. You'd look at it, you'd swear to God, it was
Yeah.
100 feet long.
So, but those
But-
kind of sets, remain
I
with you.
still remember Frank and I were, goddamn art department, he played us personally, and he asked for it.
But so those are kind of things to me
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
like Stargate, Battlestar, that movie. There's great stuff was being done, and it was a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah.
I'd like to wrap this up by asking, you guys look back on over your careers with Stargate in the mix of all that. How rare was it that the quality of the work from the people who all came together at just the right time, with just the right people to hire, just the right people who were needed, was as good as it was? What I'm really asking is, how high does Stargate go up in terms of the work that you put out and the work that people around you put out compared to all the other things that you did
Oh,
in your careers?
that's like asking us to pick our favorite child.
Yeah.
That's really hard. That's really, really hard to answer.
I've never worked with a crew that didn't say they were the A crew in town.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole lot of really, really talented people out there. And would Stargate have been the same show if the three of us had not been doing? No, it would have been a different show. And it might have been as good, might have been better. Because it is, I always think art departments and basically the whole movie crews are like a band.
Yeah.
It's like you can play guitar. You're great on drums. You're a great bass player. There's 5 other great bass players. But when you pull those people together, it's suddenly like, oh, that's that band, right?
I think the thing that made Stargate really exceptional was that we were all in the same space together.
Yeah.
We were working with, like, the writers were right there. Everybody, it was face to face, and we got that a little bit on Sanctuary as well, because it was a small show and we were all poured into one little space and had to make that work. And then after that, just because of the logistics of the world, things started getting split up, and on Arrow, we were separated from the rest of the production. We were separate from most of the stages, and so it just felt more disjointed. You didn't, and then when COVID happened, it all, even those little few connections that we still had, sort of fractured.
Yeah, that's another thing that entered into it though, because we had all done movies prior to Stargate, and we
Yeah.
had all done big movies.
Yeah,
And I had mentioned the other day the great people that I had worked with, like Sir Ken Adams and the Harry Langs and the, Terry Marshes, and the great directors like the Richard Lesters and the Frankenheimers and all those great cats. Each of these people, your standard, your personal standard is up here, okay? People used to ask me, well, Richard, how does it feel to do a television show after having come off of Bird on the Wire or some major movie where we'd spent $1 bazillion? I said, to me, there is no difference. It's the same camera, you got lights, you're telling a story. Why should that make a difference to me? as the designer or art director or whatever on that show. And these people bring that level. So it's fine about, we all get together and a whole lot of other contributing factors. But the personal level of perfection and necessity that we work to, this includes all of us, including the Toms and everybody else, because they all have that very high level. That's what we bring to it, and that's what everybody brings to it, and that's what these two bring to it. And that's what I bring to it, hopefully. And you have to maintain that level. And it's hard sometimes, because you got the accountants trying to bring you down, or you got the schedule, the AD's trying to do whatever, and everybody's got their own little thing, right? Except we have that standard. And I remember when I first started in this business, I'm sitting in the dailies, and I looked at the dailies and I said to somebody, what we did yesterday is going to be there forever. I can't go back and change it. It's on film. So why don't I get it right the first time? And that's what we do. That's why I hope am I speaking well.
I think it's dead right.
That's what you have to do. That's what they pay you to do. It comes from your heart. It doesn't come from a pocketbook. I've done low budget, high budget, medium budget. I've done shows where I was the props guy, the set decorator, the painter. So is Bridget. So is he. We all know what it takes to be there in the middle of the night with a rubber cement spray can making cobwebs in a set, and nobody else is around and you're saying, is this right? And you make a decision and you live by it. I can't tell either what you guys, how many times I said that to Bridget and to Doug. If I'm not available, you go in there, you make the call. I'll stand by you. And they know that I will. And I know that they will, because they may disagree with me privately, but they're not going to let you know that. We'll have that conversation privately,
Hardly ever.
Hardly ever.
Yeah.
Literally, hardly ever. I can count a couple of times and that's it. Maybe 18, 20, 25.
45.
But I think it's the personal standard and ethic to your chosen professional career that you bring to these things. And that stands the test of time. And like I say, to me, there's no difference between a movie, a television screen, a podcast, a video, it doesn't matter. It's capturing an image, and we are in that business.
Well said.
Yeah.
Bridget, Doug, Richard, thank you.
It was
Nice meeting
fun.
you all.
Thank you.
Lots of fun.